Today I will be sharing with you how I traveled across the world to Australia for 24 days. This once-in-a-lifetime trip consisted of 13 flights and stops in 5 major Australian cities, those being Sydney, Melbourne, Port Lincoln, Port Douglas, and Gold Coast. If you're an adventurous person and you're interested in going to Australia, this is the video for you. The number one reason I visited Australia is because of the amazing wildlife, but more specifically because of the great white sharks. My cage dive experience and my trip to Australia as a whole failed to disappoint, so let's get to it. I started from Toronto and flew to Los Angeles, where basically I stayed a night, saw some dead stingrays at Venice Beach, stayed long enough to get In-N-Out Burger, and then we were out to Sydney.
To all my family and friends back home in Canada, this is Australia!
If you're debating doing the bridge climb, do it. It is an expensive thing to do, but it is worth every penny, especially the Twilight Tour in my opinion, as you get views of Sydney both at day and at night. My recommended way of transportation in Sydney would either be Uber or the big bus for main attractions and that kind of thing. Try to get the big bus to places that you can, as it will save you a lot of money. Bus Sydney tour has 2 different routes, one takes you to Bondi Beach, which is what is on the screen right now, and just be careful for all these jellyfish because there's a lot at Bondi Beach. I'd definitely consider whale watching in Sydney. I went with Go Whale Watching Sydney, which this company was awesome, and I've never been that close to whales in my life. I've been whale watching 3 separate occasions, once in Nova Scotia and another time in San Francisco. And let me tell you, this was a surreal experience. There are companies that give you a 100% whale sighting or money back refund, but either way, I think it's just a nice boat ride. Here you're going to see the Sydney Tower Eye, which don't waste your money. I mean, it's got some nice views of the city, but it's just not worth it. After 4 days in Sydney, it was time to go to Melbourne on a short flight for the weekend, where we stayed at the Holiday Inn Express near the Flinders Street station, which conveniently has a grocery store in it, and grocery shopping is very important for traveling Australia on a budget. You won't be able to eat at a restaurant every day. Our weekend stop in Melbourne was for 2 reasons. We basically wanted to go on a Great Ocean Road tour, which is what you're seeing right now. We saw 2 koalas in the wild sitting in their trees, and we saw these parrots which came up right on top of my head for feeding. The weather conditions for this tour were not ideal. It was a rainy, slouchy kind of day, and it was actually the longest day of the trip. That's just because of how long the Great Ocean Road actually is. We made many stops along the way, including this one in a rainforest, but of course the best one was the 12 Apostles by far. We were lucky enough to get there when the weather just started to clear up. This video does make the 12 Apostles and all these rock formations look beautiful, but they're just way better in real life. Next day I went to St. Kilda to see some penguins at St. Kilda Pier. I have another video about this on my channel about how you can see penguins for free in the wild. I would do this over booking a Phillip Island tour, as it will save you time and money for the rest of your travels. From there, it was on to Port Lincoln, where I would go to fulfill my dream of cage diving with great white sharks. But first, we had to touch down in Adelaide to get on this little propeller plane and land into literally a shack in the Port Lincoln Airport. It is one terminal and it is very small. While visiting, I would recommend staying at the Port Lincoln YHA. The owners here are extremely nice and really care about their business and about their customers. If you're worried about staying in a hostel, this did not at all feel like a hostel. It honestly felt more like home. While you're in Port Lincoln, be sure to visit Glen Forest Wildlife Park, as they have koalas and kangaroos that you can get up close and personal to. And you can also go into the kangaroo enclosure and you can hand feed them like this seed mixture kind of thing. The pouches of kangaroo food are approximately $5. I'm not 100% sure. I did not have to pay for this as I had a stamp included in my Cage Dive coupon booklet. After spending about 3 or 4 hours at this park, we decided to rent a car and take it out towards Coffin Bay, which we did not ultimately make it to, but we stopped at a couple nice locations along the way, and there's just some beautiful scenic views of the ocean and a bunch of different landscapes. After this, we got ready for the cage dive. Having come all the way from Canada to do this and only seeing this breach from above the surface, the first day was definitely disheartening, so I had to go a second day to do this cage dive just because I was so disappointed on the first day. I had some complications with the tour company, but everything was ultimately resolved. There were certainly some inconsistencies that I think the Calypso Charters company could work on, those simply being customer service and just the baiting practices, which can be unfair at times. Overall, it was a great experience just to get in the water and be able to get up close and personal with a great white shark. That's been my dream, and I accomplished it. Next, we took 3 flights from Port Lincoln to Adelaide to Sydney to Cairns and stayed in Port Douglas, where we went to the wildlife habitat and held koalas. The cute little furball that I was holding decided that he would take a poo on my hand, and it was just like a little rabbit poo. We also saw crocodiles, kangaroos, cassowaries, and a black widow, which was not on exhibition at this wildlife habitat. The next adventure on this journey was the Great Barrier Reef, and I went with Quicksilver Cruises, who, I would recommend, but you don't really need to go with them. They're very expensive. I can't speak for the other tour companies because I've only tried this one. Now this is the rainforest, the Daintree Rainforest. I went with Tony's Tropical Tours. Now, I'm not one to complain. I really love nature, and I really was expecting more from this tour. It just seemed staged to me, and when we complained about it, we were just told that it's not their problem, pretty much. We went on a croc cruise, and our tour only got to go on half the croc cruise, and we spotted one crocodile, if you actually saw it there. Honestly, this tour was a bit of a disaster. At lunch, there were maybe like 6 people in our van, and there was not enough food for us. We were all pretty much fighting for the food and having arguments over it, which is certainly not the way a business should be run, in my opinion. The next and final stop on our trip was Gold Coast, Queensland. If you're all about adventures and having fun all the time, then Gold Coast might not be the place for you, unless you're into roller coasters, amusement parks, and surfing. By the time I arrived in Gold Coast, I was so exhausted from all the flights and traveling and other adventures I had done that I honestly didn't even want to do anything. I kind of just wanted to hang out, and that's what I did. I was going to do things such as the Sky Point Observation Deck or the Currumbin Wildlife Sanctuary, but genuinely ready to go home and have a good night's sleep in my own bed. But first, of course, I had over 24 hours of flights to get back to Canada. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and feel free to ask me any questions you may have regarding Australia or any other trip you want to take.